one. Yeah. Cha 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 cha. Igbo pues one. Yeah. Oko nyamili nyamili. Koko nyamili nyamili. Koko nyamili nyamili. Koko nyamili nyamili. Ibole ibole. Ibobono ndamamihe. Ibole ibole. Ibobono ndamamihe. Ebulanyelu anamabarana ihe dị njọ ma na-emezi konye ofeke anamabarana ihe dị njọ ma na-emezi konye ofeke Igbo bụ ndị ike ụmụ Igbo bụ ndị ike ụmụ Igbo bụ ndị ike ụmụ Igbo bụ ndị ike koko nyamini nyamini.
Otito niile dịrị Chineke, ọbasi dị elu, Chukwu obiọma, Chidi ebere, Olisa nwa amara, ka ụzọ anyị niile ọbụla bụrụ ihe, ka ihe ọbụla anyị kpatara aka bụrụ sọ mma, ka ụwa niile site n'ozi ọma anyị a ma obi aṅụrị taa na ebighị ebi ọfọ ya gazie ise. All praises to Chi the Creator, the Supreme Being, Chi the Good, Chi the Merciful, Chi the Magnificent with grace. Let every way of our lives be light. Let all our acts be crowned with good. May the world prosper through our ministry, now and forever. So let it be. Amen. Chineke, ọbasi dị elu, anyị na-ekele gị na mmama niile i mere anyị. Anyị nwee mkpa, mkpa anyị nwe gbasara arụ isi ike ichie, anara isi ike mother-in-law dibịa Chiedozie. Chineke biko were aka gị doo ụwa n'isi. Chineke biko ihe ọbụla na-eme ha ka ha anaghị enwe obi aṅụrị, ihe ọbụla na-eme ha ka ha daa ọrịa, Chineke biko mee ka ahụ sie ha ike, mee ka ahụ sie ha ike. Onye kere ụwa anyị na-ekele gị. Anyị ma na ihe emepụ ya, anyị ma na ihe emepụ ya, anyị ma na ihe emepụ ya bikos ọla ire eme. Anyị na-ekele gị Chineke biko were obiọma gị, were ahụ isi ike gị gbaa ichie ọnụ kama onye ọha ike, gbaa mother-in-law dibịa Chiedozie nyewe ike. Chineke biko ka ahụ dịwa mma. Anyị na-arịọ gị onye kere ụwa site ugbu a ruo mgbe na-ebighị ebi ọfọ ya gazie ise o.
Thank you for that wonderful prayer. Yes, absolutely. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome everyone to Chism Live. Dr. Wanyo Husimiri, OKDB, Dr. Wanyo Husimiri. I'm your host today, and of course, leading us in prayer today is Dibia Ochwaja Yudi Onyoha, my co-host. Thank you for that wonderful prayer. And thank you for everyone who's joining us today. And yes, may I add my voice to praying for Dibia Chedozie's mother-in-law who was taken ill this day. He's going to be with us to the best of his ability. And also for my brother, Ono Chichi Ono, who is not doing very well. But by God's grace, by Chineke's favor, they are all going to bounce back better than me. Thank you, really. What a wonderful opportunity to be walking amongst the living today. You know, I always celebrate. I always celebrate the fact that I'm here. You know, I give thanks every day from the bottom, from my toe all the way to my head. Thank you.
Every day above ground is a good day.
Above ground is a wonderful day. So good morning to all of you. I ask for perfect peace for everyone. May peace be unto you today, tomorrow, and forever, as long as you have breath. And in this space, we know that Chineke is here with us, and so are all of our ancestors. If you haven't poured libations today, make it a habit. Make it a habit. Bring goodness. You know, our world is so full of so much foolishness. You have to be prepared. You have to put the ancestors around you. You know, you have to have the heavy ammunition around you and Chineke to ensure that nothing but goodness follows you. Nothing but goodness. Because the world will tempt you. The world will trip you. And if you're not anchored properly, you're going to trip. So today I tell you, in case you're not aware of it, the ancestors are here today. All the ancestors representing who you are. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're white, black, purple, or green. Your ancestors are right with you wherever you are today. So we welcome them to join us in our conversation today. UD, thank you so very much for being here as always. And before we get started with our program today, I'd like to just have us spiritually uplifted with a little bit of music, don't you, UD?
Of course, music goes a
I
long
always
way.
like a little music to uplift.
Allows for that connection.
We don't be the man. Yes, we don't be the man. When you deal with human beings, your fellow human beings, be kind. We don't be the man. You know, follow each other. Follow each other with goodness, not with goodness. Your wish for me should be that I'm doing well. Because you don't know, it may be through me that you get God's blessings, Chineke's blessings. Whoever you call God, whatever God, whatever name you have for Chineke. We must always, to serve the divine, we serve each other. Our kindness to each other is how we serve. So let me just play this music. We'll be back.
Were obi nwayọ, were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke. Were obi dị mma, were obi nwayọ, were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke. Asị na mmadụ niile ndị bi n'ụwa ga-anụ ihe, ha ga-anụ ebe Chineke na-ajụ. Ọ bụ gịnị mere ume n'ụwa jere ibe ha iro, ebe ya bụ Chukwu kere ụwa dị mma. Were obi dị mma nwayọ na-eto Chineke. Were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke. Were obi dị nwayọ na-eto Chineke nwayọ. Were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke. Asị na mmadụ niile ndị bi n'ụwa ha ga-anụ ihe, ha ga-anụ ebe Chineke na-ajụ. Ọ bụ gịnị mere ume n'ụwa jere ibe ha iro, ebe ya bụ Chukwu kere ụwa dị mma. Were obi dị mma nwayọ na-eto Chineke. Were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke. Were obi dị nwayọ na-eto Chineke nwayọ. Were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke. Asị na mmadụ niile ndị bi n'ụwa ha ga-ahụ ihe, ha ga-ahụ ihe ọma niile Chukwu kere. Ọ dịghị onye ọbụla Chukwu si na ọka ya mma. Ọ dịghị na-eto Chineke were obi gị nwayọ were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke. A sị na mmadụ niile ndị bi n'ụwa ha ga-ekwu eziokwu, ha ga-ekwede ihe kwuru mere eme. Ọ dịghị onye ọbụla okwu ya kacha ụtọ na ntị. Omenala anyị bụ eziokwu anyị. Were obi dị mma na-eto nwayọ were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke were obi dị nwayọ na-eto nwayọ were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke. A sị na mmadụ niile ndị bi n'ụwa ha ga-anụ ihe, ha ga-anụ ebe Chineke na-ajụ ọ bụ gịnị mere ume n'ụwa jere ibe ha iro, ebe ya bụ Chukwu dịrị ụwa dị mma. Were obi dị nwayọ na-eto nwayọ were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke were obi dị nwayọ na-eto nwayọ were obi dị mma na-eto Chineke.
Yes, yes, yes. When you praise the Most High, be kind, use a kind approach, because this world belongs to all of us. Nobody owns this world. It belongs to all of us. The air, the wind, everything is for our own good. It was given to us by Chineke in equal amounts. So, as you celebrate the fact that you can inhale and exhale, give everybody the opportunity to do the same thing. That is what love is about. That's what peace is all about. And that is what I hope for all of you. As I'm breathing, inhaling, and exhaling, I am hoping for the same thing for you. And let me bring to the stage just for one quick minute. I just want to bring Dibia. Dibia, how are you? There, well, we prayed for your mother this morning.
Cow.
How are you doing better?
Is she doing better?
How's your mom, your mother-in-law? Is she okay?
Well, we hope for the best.
Okay.
It's partial stroke. She can move her left side, but it can't support her. So we are here. We're doing all the tests. When we finish with all the tests and we see what they can do, if they can't do any further, I will take her to Dibia and Borogo in the village.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
More than one way to
she's going to be fine.
Yeah.
She'll be fine.
Yeah.
She is going
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's why I deliberately sent the message, because our prayers on this program be working.
It's working. We included it in the program. We prayed before we even started doing anything. So all is well, right? We believe it. You believe it. Everybody that is associated with this situation will believe it. And when you believe it, it will manifest itself. It's between you and the spiritual realm. I'm common. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
So you have the confidence now. You're Equila.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of patience. That's all.
Of course. Okay, maybe we are.
Yep. That's it.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. So that's wonderful, wonderful.
So
today we are talking about children.
Ogele. He's trying to say something right quick.
Yes?
Yeah, please, you bear with me if there's some noises infiltrating, because you can see I'm in the car, I'm on the hospital's premises, because if I wait till I finish, I won't be able to make the program.
Okay. All right.
So occasionally, when I'm not talking, I will mute.
Okay, that's okay.
All right.
Yes.
That'll work.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so today we are going to be speaking on something that I think is so very important. And I'm going to start with the presentation. We are talking about empowering parents and navigating the school system to protect your children's well-being. Dibia Yudi and I were talking about this earlier. I I go to schools and I do cognitive testing. And when I do so, I find that there are problems in how African children are being educated. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. But before we go into that, let's just talk about what significance our children have in African culture, the importance, why their education is very, very important. In African spiritual philosophy on child raising, emphasis is on the importance of the community, the ancestral connection, and holistic development. It's not just academic, it's holistic. You educate the children as it pertains to everything around them. And that's why in the village you have age group systems, because it's so important for the kids to understand how important they are in the community, the growth of the community, the well-being of the community. They are part of it. Because we adults, someday we're not going to be here anymore. Who do we leave behind? The children. African spirituality recognizes children are not only shaped by their immediate family, but also by the wider community and the values left behind by their ancestors. So in our cultures, child raising is seen as a collective responsibility, with everyone in the community participating, playing a role in the upbringing and guidance of the children. And that is why when the child sees an elder, they don't misbehave, because that elder has a responsibility and authority to stop them, to chastise them, to teach them the way to go. This philosophy values transmission of cultural values, traditions, and knowledge from one generation to the next, because these kids are important. There is no community, no future without them. So it's important that we pay attention to how the children are being raised. We emphasize spiritual connection between the children, and I want to re-emphasize that, and their ancestors, with rituals, with ceremonies often being performed in honor to honor and seek a guidance from ancestors in the child's development. It is a holistic upbringing. Overall, in African spirituality, the philosophy of child raising promotes this approach because it nurtures the physical, the emotional, the social, and the spiritual well-being of the children. But it's important to take a cautious and informed approach when considering evaluations for your children. What do I mean by evaluations? Those who evaluate your children are in the schools, and they determine, quite frankly, whether you know it or not, how far your child is going to go, because they start addressing issues that they shouldn't be addressing while the child is little. They should be waiting for the children to get older before exploring what to do about the child's challenges. But they start so very early evaluating your children, not from a holistic perspective, but from an academic, purely academic perspective. And children are not always ready for academic knowledge when they are little. The academic excellence is very, very important, but also is their social development, their spiritual development. We must take a holistic attitude towards the development of our children. I was watching I listened to Dr. Umar Johnson, a school psychologist and an activist, who said it all. He said, everything that I feel when I go into the school system and look at our children, our parents are failing their children because they are allowing these children to be tested when they are very, very small. Children are not necessarily prepared for testing when they are less than 3 years old. When you evaluate them when they're very, very young, it leads to those children being misdiagnosed. It leads to them being being diagnosed with autism, ADHD, all of those things. But you see, at that young age, our children are not ready. They don't even know what it is you're talking about. because their brains have not processed that. They're still developing. And their development is different from one child to the other. But we have a standard way of evaluating them based not from an African perspective, but from a Eurocentric perspective. And most of our children don't live in a Eurocentric environment. So some of the things you're looking for, they don't know. They may not exhibit. It's always important when we are having our children evaluated, make sure you understand the tenets of the evaluation. How does it actually impact your children? Are your children even understanding what's being asked of them? And when they don't, they're given a diagnosis. They become autistic, ADHD. They have reading disabilities. I go to these schools and I see a lot of African children in special ed. When a child is very young, they cannot communicate certain things to you. Their ability to communicate with you is not as advanced as it would be like when they are 5 years old. If you're evaluating them at age 3, they're still learning. Some kids wouldn't even talk until they're about 5. Their communication skills is limited. But we draw conclusions about them when they haven't even started to express who they are. We determine for them who they are by the diagnosis we give them. And we as parents are not paying attention. We get up in the morning, we have to go to work, we dress them up, feed them, take them to these schools. Children are in school almost 8 hours a day. You think you're the one raising your children? You're not. The people raising your children are the schools. And so you as a parent, you've got to be very careful what your child is being taught. How are they diagnosing your children and why are they doing that? Black parents, you must understand that you have a responsibility to your children. Don't get these children diagnosed with all these things. And then what you have to understand, once a child is diagnosed with a disability, then the approach towards that child is not from a perspective of strength, but a perspective of weakness. And you have a lot to do with it because you allow them to be diagnosed when they're so little. They haven't even told you who they are. You don't know who they are. The children are just growing. They're just starting. But they've already been told they can't do this, they can't do that, even when their development is still in under construction, if I may use that expression. Be very cautious when the kids are tested early. Because you see, in the school system, according to, and which I've observed, and according to Dr. Omar, special education starts at age 3. So there is a need for these children to be tested by the schools. They test them because they get money. Tell the truth now. We've got to tell the truth. They get money when they have these children identified as having a particular diagnosis, autism, ADHD, all kinds of things. But it is important for you to allow your child to show you who they are. Let your child tell you who they are before you're so quick to diagnose them, so your child doesn't make eye contact. So what? That's just where they are at the moment. So your child is not talking. So what? That's just where they are. Some children don't even start talking till they are 10. No child is no one size fits all. Be careful, African parents, Latino parents, minority parents. Be careful how you are allowing your children to be diagnosed. Don't jump into these diagnoses. They don't always mean well. You have the ADHD, conduct disorder, emotional disturbance, intermittent explosive behavior. These Black children, they show these things, they exemplify these things, but it's not necessarily a problem, but it is a problem for the school that needs the money. There is a pipeline from school to jail. When you frustrate the child, when you diagnose the child and you start treating the child according to your diagnosis, you frustrate that child. Ultimately, they're not going to perform. I always tell parents, before your child goes to the next class, ask the teacher to show you your child's file. See your child's file before the child goes to the next class, because whatever is put in that child's file is going to follow that child. If they say that the child, oh, he has emotional disturbance, the next teacher is going to acquiesce. And they will be looking for that disturbance in that child. Intermittent explosive disorder, that's in that child's file. The next teacher is going to be looking for that. Any little thing your child does is going to be associated with that diagnosis. You got to be careful, Black parents. For those of us who pay attention, Black boys in particular, Black boys are boisterous. When you sit down at a park, watch Black children play. Now, I'm not saying the other children are not playing, but Black children are very boisterous. That's how they, that's how they get out of frustration or anger or whatever, through play. But you're expected that these children are expected to sit in a classroom for 8 hours, like little, like people in a jail. You gotta march to the bathroom, march to the cafeteria, march like little soldiers. They don't have a mind. They're not allowed to play. And that is why there are some countries where children, I think it's China, children just they don't even start academic work till they're 6. Everything else is just nothing but play. Some schools don't even start till the child is in 3rd grade. So you've got to be very careful that you are not substituting your child's welfare for the school. The school will determine who your child is because there's money involved. Yes, I said it. I see it when I go to schools. It's not the best approach to have these kids diagnosed. And there are some diagnoses that come with a lot of medication. A lot of medication, and you allow your child to be medicated. And let me tell you, after your child has been diagnosed and is medicated, you can't take them off that medication, no matter what that medication is doing to that child. You can't, well, it's not good for my child, I'm going to stop it. No. Once you do that, then it leads to Child Protective Services to come to your home, knock on your door, and tell you that you're wrong. They tell you that what you're doing is medical neglect because you don't want your child on those medications they give them. And you know what? You may have your child taken from you. Your child may be taken from your home and put in foster care. And for those of us who live in Africa, what are your children learning in school? What are they learning in school? As far as we're concerned, the more Eurocentric the school is, the happier we are. The more we think our children are learning. They're not learning. Pay attention, parents. These are the future of the community. These are the future of your world. Dr. Omar said that when he went to the jail, and I had Eddie GM, who's now he's now passed away. He and I used to go to with his band. We'll go to the jails, and in the jails there are all these African men, African women in jail. For God knows what. And if you ask them, they are about their childhood. Dr. Omar said that he went to jail and he asked them to raise their hands if they've been diagnosed with ADHD as a child or autism and all of that. He says almost all of them raise their hands. It's pipeline from school to jail. And parents are not paying attention. I was sharing with my brother, Dibia Yudi, today, a video of a baby hippopotamus that was eaten by an alligator. The parents were watching. They were all there until the alligator ate the baby. Then they got angry and they all cornered the alligator and tore it to pieces. But by then it was too late. The baby was dead. This is what we're doing. We put our children are being torn up by these schools. And then afterwards, then we shall overcome. We get all upset afterwards. But in the meantime, that's when you pay attention. Pay attention in the meantime, not after the fact. Children should be able, our Black children in particular, they need the opportunity to have physical activities, to release energy. It is not us. That's not how we are. In the natural environment, the African child is at the farm with the parents. They're learning. Every activity is learning. They're not just sitting. But this Eurocentric way of raising our children, now it may be good for them. It's their culture, sure. But in trying to fit your children into their culture, they're medicating them, they're diagnosing them, misdiagnosing them, frustrating the children. And then you as parents, they feed you those things during parent-teachers meeting. They make you sign all these papers saying, oh yes, my child is this, that, and the other. Then when you get home, you get mad at your child and you ask your child, why are you acting this way? How come you can't be like your brother or your sister or whomsoever? The children get so frustrated, they won't even tell you what's going on in their world. They clamor, they get angry. And next thing you know, they become they actually act out those diagnoses. Today's program is to remind you that you as a parent, you have a responsibility for the well-being of your children. Don't allow the world to define them. You must define your children. You must raise your children yourself. And stop allowing people to raise them. And then when they come out all confused and in jail, you wonder what happened. What happened is not just the school. What happened is you, mother, father, and you Black dads, you must be in your children's lives. Black fathers are so important in their children's lives. Mothers are important as well. They have their role to play. But if you have a son, you must pay attention to what's happening to your child. You must. That is the conversation today. Become an empowered parent so that you know what's going on in your child's life. I'm going to bring both of you in and you tell me, you share your thoughts on what I have shared today.
Well,
your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have, by the way, very good lecture. Great job. The points that you brought out, were really, really pressing and very important. And also stressing the responsibility that we have as parents to pay attention to children's education, what they're learning, which school they're going to, getting second opinions and stuff like that. But I also have an observation, I would say, on a micro level, because a lot of stuff that we see are really a result, of either imperialism or we as a people, as a culture, as Black folks, just and not paying attention to our responsibility and what we need to do to make sure that we're not prisoners of the system. Let's say if you're Indian here in the United States and you have children and you send them to the public schools, you also have a responsibility that after that, putting them in an environment that you can't really control because you're living within this system, and within these systems there are certain expectations, and you must fulfill those expectations to be able to, legally, live your life in a society. There are just certain things you have to do, whether it's your etiquette, as how you treat people, whether it's about the schools that your children go to, whatever your communal responsibilities are as a citizen or as an immigrant, whatever you are, you have certain things that you have to do. Now, personally speaking, a lot of the solutions is really going to come from us as a community, right? When I talked about the Indian family sending their children to school within this system that they live in, the amazing thing about it is that once they leave that school and get back to the household, they're surrounded by Indian culture on every level, whether it's language, whether it's religion, whatever it is that they identify as prerequisites to establishing your citizenship or your community allegiance, they have that. So even though the children go to school 6 in the morning, they get off at 3 or 4, whenever they get off, they get back home, they're not surrounded with this culture. You see, and it is that culture that nurtures them, and going to school during the day is just an obligation that you have to fulfill to be able to survive in a society. But what fortifies you as a person, as a people of African ancestry, or as an Indian, or whatever culture you belong to, is your tradition. We ourselves first have to recognize the failures within our own community. The willingness of the people to come together, which for us, unity is really the problem that we have. And it's because we're not unified, that's why we're not able to establish this cocoon that our children can come back to and get immersed in their culture after straying for maybe 6-8 hours every day to the public school system, and then after that come back to the household where they are nurtured in their culture, their traditions, their religion, their communal responsibilities. They have their Hindu temples and all that they go and they worship and all that. So while they are computer scientists and very educated in all areas of human endeavor, well, particularly in computer science, they never seem to lose that obligation they have as a people. The willingness of the people to come together can be said to depend largely on their education which can be defined as a deliberate system of culture promotion or course instigation by which a person is forged to fit squarely into the society to which he or she belongs as a responsible citizen. So in the United States, for example, it's done two ways. The public school system, so that you could be educated in this system to be able to survive in it. And then also the other system, which is your backbone, your culture, your identity. These things are very important. We as a community still don't understand the concept of nation formation, nation building, and nation management. What are the steps for cultural and economic revitalization, which is very important to be able to deal with this issue, with this early diagnosis, all those kinds of things, and putting yourself in a situation where you now have to defend your child and you not being equipped enough with facts about the dangers of this early diagnosis that are not really warranted, because according to you, children are really too young when they're 2 or 3 years old to go through these kinds of diagnoses and have somebody determine at that age, what their growth is going to be like. See, but if we are grounded in our social economic systems, if we actually are able to think along the lines of cultural and economic revitalization and the importance of creating a cocoon that our children can come back to after spending 6 to 8 hours every day in a public school system. as a society as a community, people of African ancestry, we don't really have a place that can unite us. And the only way to unite the people usually is through a common language, religion, race sometimes. Those are the ways that you could bring the people together. You don't have to do all of them, but if you could at least do one, let's say you speak the same language. This is something that you have in common, and that opens up communication. What about religion? That's another way of bringing people together under a common cultural focus, which we as a community don't have. We don't even have that in Africa. We used to, but it's a different thing altogether now, you know, because of colonization and slavery, of course. You see? So the modus operandi of the conqueror is to come in, remove what's in place, and supplant it with theirs. There's such a thing as cross-cultural promotion, where cultures borrow from one another and sometimes develop a culture of their own, but they're enriched because of this idea or this process of cross-cultural promotion. But cross-cultural promotion is different from imperialism, where instead of sharing ideas across cultures, one culture just comes in, destroys the other one, replaces everything that was in place by their standards. And these are some of the things that we as a community of people are going through today, going through right now. So my thought on this is, number one, you have the facts, you pretty much, you know, explain those facts in your presentation, and kudos to Dr. Uma Johnson for bringing that up. But ultimately, to combat this situation, we really have to look inward and understand the role that we as parents, as a community, have to play in creating a cocoon that our children can come back to be immersed in the African way of life, whatever that might mean.
Yes, for our children. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Wonderful. Adibia, there's your thoughts.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I had to unmute myself. I enjoyed this topic a lot because if we flash our minds back, we had talked a lot about these indirectly in the past programs. Of course, all our programs are connected. That's why, because it's rests on the ontology of chiism. So yeah, the thoughts are connected. I give kudos to Dibia and Dibia Ochoaja. Both of you have really hit the nail on the head. So I will just do some summations here. First, we have to realize that the European culture, we think it's a culture that's serene. It's going through crisis. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the European civilization, their culture is under severe crisis, under very severe crisis. And that crisis materializes most in those places you call America, Canada, where the European culture is grafted. It's a grafted European culture. And if you go back to Europe, you discover that those European nations that are trying to go more scientific are even more into greater crisis. Something happened in the European life. And that thing that happened is that they woke up at a point in time, they thought they had been held down by the draconian laws of Catholicism. They revolted against it, and they went to the extreme of trying to move away from religion and from their spirituality to science. And then at a point, they thought that science has no connection with morality. In fact, at a time, they argued that law has no connection with morality. If law has to be law, it has to work with its own internal morality. And so positivism set into what you call today's European culture. And that positivism crept into every aspect of European culture, their religion, their science, their law, and with it came with what they call self-autonomy, individual autonomy. In traditional European culture, individual meant one in the midst of others. It means the indivisible unit, just something similar to what we have today in traditional Africa. But whereas theirs was communism, ours was communalism. Theirs was communism, ours was communalism. So, but when in the age of, when they now came to the age of science, something happened with the Europeans. What happened with the Europeans is that they decided to move away completely from uh, what you call communal life to individual life. And wherever they went to, they transferred this virus. By the time they came to Africa, they brought that virus. They brought the virus with them and they transferred it to us. And they now begin to empower their own people. They picked up on Africans who they thought had grudges against their own culture, their own people. They picked on those people that in Achebe, things fall apart, the Igbos will call Efulefu. They empowered them and they began to use such people to disembowel our communalistic spirit. And then they brought in their education, they brought in their religion, and then that culture of individualism crept into our own culture and is a virus that eats down the communalistic spirit. It eats down everything you call communal spirit. And so we also now are victims. But the greatest danger of this scientific culture is that it uses the human being as an experiment. The human being is also being used as an experiment. So it's not only animals that are used as experiment. Human beings are used as experiment. Because what the colonial masters did with us was using us for an experiment. Anthropology was a science that sold most during the colonial period. Every administrator that came to Africa was an anthropologist. Every missionary that came to Africa was an anthropologist. And with that, they gave themselves the mandate of the white man's burden to civilize and Christianize and commercialize the rest of the world, particularly Africa. The agenda was to make sure we are colonized to the point that we will remain in tutelage, European tutelage, in perpetuity. Now, the crisis is in, and Dibia Ochaja has suggested ways forward. And the way he suggested is the way we should go. Because I remember discussing with my sister who lives with the husband in London, and she, unlike her before she left the shores of this country, when I told her anything about culture, she would say, oh no, I should forget about that. Although she's a deep Catholic, deep Christian, but these days, when I talk about things about Dibia, about culture, she's the first to even grab it. And I asked her, how come the sudden change?
No, he's frozen. He's frozen, Ogele.
Is he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I'm going to bring him back. You know, Dibia, one of the problems that we have is, as I indicated earlier, we're not paying attention. Isn't it interesting that after the children have spent 3, 6, 7, 8 hours at school, once they get out of class, when they dismiss the class, then they have the after school program. Okay, all of this because mom and dad are not there. The wealthy people don't have these after school programs for their children to stay in school. They're actually babysitting those kids, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So the kids, now in some schools, in some settings, they let the children sit there and do their homework. Okay. In some settings, sit there and do their homework. All right. But when they get home, many have homework to take home with them. So after you have not spent time with your children for 8 hours, then they come home. Now they're doing homework. How many that? Maybe an hour or two for homework. Then you feed them, and after you feed them, it's time for them to go to bed. What time do you have every day to instill your values? Because their schoolwork comes home with them. Their time is constantly occupied with academics. Now, over the weekend, that's the only time you try to fit in what you couldn't do during the week. The basketball, the football, the whatever it is the children are doing, the swimming lessons, the piano lessons, name it. But in the meantime, those children are still being conditioned outside of their home, outside of their community. Everything is about what is taught at school, what they carry home from school, and parents are not paying attention. You're not raising your children. The schools are raising your kids, and they're doing a fabulous job instilling, unfortunately, maybe not strength in them, but weaknesses, reminding them of their weaknesses. You're not good in math. You're not good in this. You have a parent meeting. Your child is not good in math. Maybe that's not his forte. Maybe math is not what he's good at. Can somebody just call me and say, hey, we're so proud of your son or your daughter is a dynamic speaker. Oh my God, you should hear him speak. Or he's an artist, or he's this. Boy, it's always a little bit of what they're good at, but mostly what they're not good at. So that you now will focus on their weakness instead of their strength. Parents, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. These children are being conditioned, many of them, not all of them. Some schools do a good job, but they're not being conditioned to win. They're not being conditioned to represent you. They're being conditioned to either go to jail or to represent the other European world, but not your world. How many Black children can tell you anything beyond Dr. Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or Bethune McLeod, etc.? They can tell you about those people because that's what the school chooses to focus on, but they can't tell you about all the other powerful Black people that they should be learning about. We just teach them the safe Black people they should know, the safe ones. Dr. Martin Luther King says, I have a dream that black children and white children will be, will come together, except, all those, it's wonderful, it's powerful. His speech is powerful. There's no two ways about that. But we just latch on to those. We come together and not be judged by the color of our skin. But we're not talking about all the other things that he did say, all the other powerful things he said. We are not educating our children, is the point I'm trying to make. And because of it, just look at it, Yudi. You know it. I don't care what nation you go to. As long as they're African people, they still have that inferiority complex. And it starts from when they are children. Yeah. And it carries over till they become adults. You know, adults will do something. An adult will put another Black person down. A Black person will put another Black person down. But will not do the same thing to a foreigner. From the school, they are conditioned that they're inferior because only their weaknesses. So anyway, the whole idea of this conversation today is, what do we do as parents, as grandparents? What do we do to ensure that the children are not being used as pawns in a political game or a power brokerage, if I may use that expression? We need to read everything that they write about our children before we sign it. What does this mean? Read and make sure that the file that's carried over to the next teacher about your child doesn't have negative things in it. And if it does, you want it removed. If they refuse to remove it, you ask why. What is the benefit of this being here? You were my brother. I remember you were my brother, and I remember when you guys were young. You guys always fighting each other, just duking it out, just playing. You never sat still. You couldn't wait to get out the door.
True
Once
that.
you were fed, the boys,
Very
I
true.
know my brothers, they run out to go play with anything, just climb trees, whatever. That's letting out that energy. That's a boy and a girl do it as well, but boys need that. But every day they have an hour for recess, and before you know, they have to go in. We need to consider re-educating our children the way nature has ordained for them, letting their energy out, being able to speak up. Girls, on the other hand, girls are talkative. They love to talk. They like to express themselves. They like to show their talent, their art, but all that is subdued. If they talk, they go to the principal's office, you talk too much. Everything that shows their strength is looked at as a negative. That impacts them. And then the parents are called, your daughter or son was doing this and doing that, and that poor baby is sitting there dreading you coming. And when you come, you dress them down. Wait till I get you home. You get home, go outside and get that switch. Why are you switching it? Because the teacher said so. Why did the teacher say so? For him doing what is natural to him. We're not doing a good job, parents. Black parents, Latino parents. The school is not where you raise your children. The children should be raised by you at home. Let me tell you how I feel about it. Whatever the children need to learn that day, let them learn it in school. Stop bringing those homework home. When they come back the next day, then do whatever they need to do. When they come home, it becomes mom and dad's opportunity to raise them. Send them home prepared to learn about their community, about their family, about whatever. Most children run home and immediately they got to do homework. Their room's a mess. They can't clean their room because they've got to do homework. They can't help their mother with the cooking because they have to do homework. They can't help their father with the lawn mowing because they're doing their homework. And then before you know it, take a bath, time to go to bed, and do it again. And they haven't learned anything from mom and dad. School has its place. It's a good thing. But I think, this is me, and people will disagree with me, that's all right. We need to have a cutoff point where the children begin to be allowed to be children. If they can't do it at school, if they've got 8 hours of school, and then they come home and they can't play because they're doing schoolwork again. Many of these children are not impacted positively by all of this. Play is important. When they come home, let them get outside, go play, run around, play with the dog. Come help mom with whatever she's doing. Help dad with whatever he's doing. And as a matter of fact, when a child is sitting next to a parent and they're learning what their parents are doing, the parents are talking to them. Now, I grant you, there are some families where there's no mother and there's no father. There are some parents, some children who live with grandparents who are elderly, may not have all that energy and all that. So circumstances may dictate what has to happen with a particular child. But the point I'm trying to make today is that we as parents need to start paying attention and stop living everything to the schools to do. Not all schools are doing a good job of it. So before I bring in Dibia Chedozi, I would like us to take a quick break and come back, and we'll continue the conversation. Don't go away. Stay with us.
Undewo. Long life to y'all. Hey, how y'all doing, man? You know what I'm saying? I'm just walking out here in nature, and I just felt like I had to say thank you all for showing us the support. Because I know there's been technical problems and been a lot of things going on in the world, but y'all stay and tune in every Sunday. And I much appreciate y'all for all the support. Over 11,000. I said 11,000. 111 subs on YouTube. So much love. Appreciate y'all. And I know there's over like thousands over on Facebook. But make sure to tune into our YouTube every Sunday. You know what I'm saying? Turn on the post notifications. Like, comment, subscribe. Gosh. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. It will be much appreciated. And y'all have a wonderful day and have a blessed day. God bless you.
You know, it's so wonderful. I just want to announce that we have crossed the 500 subscription. So we are growing. This is wonderful. But I want to ask our audience. Yes, absolutely. We've gone over 500 now, and it's growing. It's always a slow process when you're trying to grow something. So we do appreciate all those people. So that means that there are that many people who actually, you may not see them, but they are listening because they are alerted whenever we're on. So they are listening. They listen either during the show or after the show because they do get alerted. So thank you. But I encourage you to please ask your friends, family, whomsoever, to please give us their support. It's not about money. It's just for them to subscribe to our channel because we need to grow our channel. Their subscription helps a lot, you know. So please continue to share. Don't just come to the program. You know, we want you to also share our website, Chisholm, our website, chisholm.org website, and it's scrolling down here, and also, of course, the African spirituality, Chisholm, African spirituality on YouTube. We want you to please give us our support. Share as much as possible. We're also, of course, Facebook page, Chisholm, Global Faith Ministries of Chisholm on Facebook. We want you to please share this information. Dibia Chedozie, you were talking and you kind of froze on us. So
I'm sorry. You know, anytime we're using the handset and the call comes in, it will disturb. So that's what happened. Now, just quickly, my younger sister, I was surprised when she agreed with me that we need our culture. And I asked her why. She said the research has been done in Britain, and they discovered that those cultures that live in community and live by their culture, the Indians, the Lebanese, the Pakistanis, the Jews, all of them live as communities. They don't live singly, they live as communities.
Yes.
And they teach their children their culture before they let their children out to the outside world. In fact, I'm aware that the Jews don't let out their children anywhere they live as a community, and they don't let out their children to the outside world until that child is 6 years. So by that time, they have taught the child the essentials, the basics of what it means to be a Jew.
Yes.
And so they discovered that children who have cultural background they are less committed to crime and personal crime. They have more personal check, self-regulation, self-mastery, and they are less prone to crime. They now look at the white children and the black children. They discover that the white children is suffering from this syndrome of science, no morality. So without morality, no conscience. So they now realize that they need morality because if you base everything on law and you make law scientific, then conscience is lost then soul is lost, then
Yeah.
law becomes mere letter. And science that is limited to just materialism, the body, matter, will not touch the spirit. And once the spirit is not there, there's no soul.
Mhm.
And once there's no soul, no conscience. So they discovered that, and so they themselves began to re-equip themselves, and also started encouraging the Black community to start tutoring their children on their own culture. Now, the problem is that other people except the
Mhm.
Blacks in UK have their culture intact. They live as communities. The Blacks don't live as communities. All right. So the consciousness is there in UK that you have to live by at least teach your child the language, teach them their folklores, because 10 years ago, they were the point that if you gave a Black child in the primary school maybe a story to write, they only wrote those ones in the Bible. And when it came to morality, they are the worst. And they discovered that all their children could give or write folklores or stories from their own cultural background. So that consciousness is being addressed. But again, the problem is that we are addressing the surface, just like Okedibia said. You teach us about Martin Luther King Jr., what he said, and you emphasize only those ones that favor the, the imperialist culture, where he said that he had a dream where the children of former slave owners and former slaves will sit and wine and dine on the table. Well, but you don't tell them the details of his speech. And so you are analyzing the thing so that the Black child will get lost in the
Mhm.
white community. Now, the problem is how African
Mhm.
is the African of today. Like when we come to African philosophy, we teach is that the Africanness of African philosophy. And what do we mean by the Africanness of African philosophy? African spirituality. That is the foundation of African culture. If we lose
Yes.
out on African spirituality, what we're going to have is an adumbrated African culture that is hybrid. It is no longer original. So that's the problem we have today, because to be a parent within African culture is that you oversee everything your children do. You do not leave your children to what you call self-autonomy, because our ontology is not that of self-autonomy, self-sovereignty. It is that of shared sovereignty, shared autonomy. I am an individual. I am my own chi, but this chi of mine cannot live in isolation. That is why we factored our community on the understanding of the cosmic. Because even when we look at the cosmic, all the stars interrelate. And when we look at our own immediate Mother Earth, all rivers connect to the ocean and also derive from the ocean. Even the lake underneath is connected to the water table underground. So all waters meet and all rivers flow into one another, into the ocean. So our people built a communalistic spirituality to let the individual know that the only way we can thrive in the society is onye biri ibe ya biri, onye biri ibe ya, live and let live. Ndụ azụ, ndụ mmiri, life of mutuality, complementarity. Contradictions are not meant that we should be antagonistic. It means that we should be complementary. Just like Dibia Ochoa said, Dibia Ochoa said it, and okay, Dibia said it. We children will be children, and boys will be boys, girls will be girls. There is no time they are going to think like us adults. The adults must be adults, so parents must be parents. That does not mean that the life of the child is antagonistic to that of the parent or the adult. It means they are complementary, because if children begin to behave like adults, so what work have we parents to do? So children will be their children for us to do our parenting job. And the parenting means we have to guide and guard them. And most of the time in this age that we live in, whereby everybody is asking for. That virus has eaten into the psyche of every child through the schools. I want my freedom. Just like in my department, there's a case we just solved just two days ago. A girl decided to leave her parents, said she wanted to be alone. She wanted her self-autonomy. For 2 months, we were looking at, for 1 month, she scampered away from home. And we had to trace her until we got her just 2 days ago, where she was hiding, with a boy. And that kind of crazy thing. And then I told the father, yes, I know you are trying your best as a father, but let me tell you that you are not going to use the hands your father used on you on the child of today. Children of today, you talk with them, you reason with them, you enter into them, you bring them into your own life, daily life promenade. You don't just leave them to the schools, all right? Because one danger that happened is that we thought the teacher is one of superior character. The pastor, the clergyman is one of superior character. But what we forgot is that the teacher, the clergyman, have been taken out of our spirituality. And they are teaching spiritualities and cultures that are antithetical to our own spirituality. So antithetical to our values. And so the basic problem, the fundamental problem we have to solve today is that first, how do we re-educate the African parent? That's a task that we have to solve. And that's one of the things this program is addressing right now. The problem is not just the African child, the African parent. Because yes, the African parent, we have to reconstitute the parenthood of the African parent. So that when we do that, then the African child will be well tutored and well guided. Until we do that, we keep having this problem. That's my little take. And please, I think I'm being called, so I will take my leave at this point.
Excellent.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, guys, here.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Excellent.
We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. That was beautiful.
And our best wishes to the family.
Yes.
Our best wishes.
Yudi,
one of the areas that is.
Yeah, guys, here.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you. One of the areas that really, really, truly concern me is the medication of the children. Okay, there are so many of our children who are medicated. Every medication has a side effect. Every medication has a side effect. But because we parents allow our children to be diagnosed and given the medication that comes with that diagnosis, or at least recommended for those diagnoses. And what are the diagnoses I'm talking about? That it is diagnosis that actually reflect the normal way children behave. It's called explosive disorder. All of a sudden, a child, has temper tantrums and all that. Instead of us finding what's causing it, and particularly when that child is displaying that at the school, because sometimes these children act a certain way at school, but they don't act that way at home, right? And you need to know, why are they acting that way? Why are they acting that way? Those kids may well be acting that way because they're bored. They're not learning anything. They don't feel they're learning anything. And then when they display that explosive disorder, okay, and who coined them? Who coined those disorders? It's not you and I.
No.
Who coins disorders? Yeah. Okay. So then what happens is they say, oh yeah, your child needs medication, okay, to address that. But it's addressing the symptoms. It's not addressing the root cause, okay? And as long as you address the root cause, you subdue the child, but that problem hasn't gone away. The child has just been subdued, and is only subdued not for his own good when all is said and done, but to make the teacher comfortable. because the teacher has all these other children they have to deal with. So they don't have time for your unruly child. So, if we give him medication, that will quiet him down. But here's the problem with our medication. It has side effects.
Yeah.
Okay. It may, you know what I'm saying? It may calm him down, but it may dull his mind.
Yeah. True.
Some of those medications cause them to be sleepy. They may be sleepy. They may be, and some side effects is the unattentiveness. They don't pay attention. So we solve one problem, we develop another. For my part, I think that African children should be in their own schools that take into consideration their culture, schools that have people that look like them teaching them, schools that have people who have the same values as their parents do, assuming the parents have good values, right? Schools that are actually interested in training future generations of children. That is why kids who go to Morehouse College do extremely well. They have self-confidence. They're being led. The people who are teaching them look like them and have their interests at heart. When you uplift a child, when their self-esteem is high, learning is rapid. Learning is joyful. Learning is what they want to do. If a child feels that they belong, if a child feels that they are loved and the people around them and their teachers care about their learning, they learn.
Yeah.
But if a child feels that the teacher is punitive, the teacher doesn't care. If that child has their hand raised to answer the question, but the teacher will not pick on them, we know that story. That child is not going to feel well. When the children are surrounded by people who call them the N-word, people who think they are less than, that child doesn't learn. That child is constantly on defensive mode, survival mode, not learning mode. They show that there are some of these schools where African-centered school, when the children are coming in, you have these black men coming to welcome them to school and give them high fives and all of that stuff. You see the children beaming. They can't wait to go in and learn. Their communities welcoming them to school. But when you have a child whose teacher doesn't even acknowledge him or her, that child is not there to learn. They cannot learn. They're there to develop the symptoms of neglect. They become attitudinal. They have attitude. They become withdrawn. They become unattentive. They are put on medication. They continue to slide. The slippery slope gets worse. Slope gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. The children cannot perform. Black parents need to reconsider sending their children to these schools. Create your own. There are enough wealthy black people to create schools that are out for their children. I feel really sorry for a lot of our children in some of these suburban schools. I feel sorry for those parents who unfortunately have to go to work. Well, it's not an unfortunate thing, it's a necessity. But they cannot really spend time with their children. I feel sorry for the communities, the African communities that lose these children to crime. Children who have just given up on education. And as they get older, they become more unruly and they end up in jail. I feel sorry for our communities that are losing such kids. I told you earlier, when I went with what is his name, Eddie GM, to these jails. I'm telling you, Yudi, you come out of there, you don't know how to act. It's like your whole breath is taken away from you when you see all these beautiful, beautiful black people in jail, young black men. How did they get there? How did these many young black men, I haven't been to the women's jails, but I know it's the same thing. they get there? What level of frustration or neglect? What level of frustration and neglect has led them to here? When we think that schools are there for your children, some schools, yes, some schools, no. That's where we as parents come into play. Teach your child that they, wherever they are, that their ancestors are with them, that they have the power to make a change in their lives. Tell them to walk in there with their heads held high, in spite of, but only you can teach them that. And I always advocate for children not to have homework. That's me. Now, there's some people that would disagree with me. I think that it is enough time spent in academics or with academics. From 6:30 a.m. to 3, cut off, enough. You as an adult, what do you do when you come back from work, UD? What is the most thing you do? That's it. Work is work. I'm done. I want to sit, be with my wife. I want to eat. I want to cook. I want to do this. I see you want to play your guitar. You want to unwind. But we stress those children from school. They come home, they got to do math and history and social studies. And instead of mom and dad spending time with them, teaching them other things, mom and dad now go to school because now they have to teach math and English and all of that. They're exhausted. They're telling the child, you're not paying attention. Boy, go to bed.
Yeah, true. You lose.
That's a tragedy.
Yeah,
that is a tragedy.
It's very true.
You see what I'm saying? So the focus of this program is on us as parents understanding that the success of our children, their well-being, is our responsibility. So we're not taking this, let me give some parents. There are some parents who are very, very, very involved and engaged in the lives of their children, in the academic journey of their children. That's very good. But a lot of these children are hollow spiritually, they're hollow socially, they are focused on academics, and they don't know anything about their culture. Their culture defines who they are. Their culture is what they need to become successful adults, because that's where they're nurtured. That's where they're made to feel important. What are your thoughts, Judy?
No, you're absolutely right. In the end, it's really about nurture. What kind of nurturing are these children getting? I mean, like you had explained earlier on in your presentation, maybe about 6 hours a day, from 8 to maybe 3 or something like that. That children are out of the house, in the school system, getting educated, and learning what the system wants them to learn, learning to conform to what the system wants the children to conform to, their rules, the culture, whatever that is, plus pipeline, to the factories, pipeline to the professional, realm, and then of course pipeline to jail. And in the end, everything is really about nurturing and your environment. Not everybody has the same opportunities. Some children grew up in middle-class families. Some children grew up very poor. Some children grew up rich. So opportunities vary based on your economic condition, and that also affects what kind of education that children get and what kind of after-school program that the parents can afford. Assuming that they want to do something about, the kind of learning that the children are having in school and what they feel that is lacking that they could fulfill by having some after-school programs that the children can attend to. But in the end, it's really, at least if we're concentrating on African families, African Americans, people of African ancestry, or those, from South America, I don't call them Spaniards, I talk about the Incas, the Mayans, the Aztecs, and whatever other cultures that existed, back in South and Central America before the Spaniards came over there and kind of supplanted the local culture with Catholicism. And as you can see today, South America is wrought with violence, mismanagement, corruption, and all those symptoms of a larger problem, which is not paying attention to your history, your culture, the greatness, the contributions that your civilization make to, your culture make to civilized behavior in all areas of human endeavor, science, architecture, and what have you. And as opposed to looking at yourself as a journey come lately, somebody who just showed up, and to survive in this world, you have to learn this foreign culture and you have to conform to it for you to be able to survive. And as that becomes the norm, you're taking further and further and further and further away from your own cultural beginnings, your own history. Now, we here in Global Fit Ministries of Chiism, and I'm sure there are all the platforms out there that promote African culture, African history, that perhaps also see what it is that we see. We need more of those. We need institutions, both from a primary level to secondary and university level, like we're doing with Chiis Mahadum, to provide a culturally relevant education, to, in a way, to at least try to mitigate some of the misdirection that the grown-ups, the quote-unquote adults, experienced as they were coming up through primary, middle school, and high school, and now decided that they want to attend a university that is African-centered as a way of building a Pan-African mindset. So my thing is, where are we as a community globally, with cultural promotion? Do we understand this problem that you so eloquently articulated in your presentation? Is it just about few people having an understanding and now having a responsibility to share this information like we're doing now on this platform? We are responsible for what happens to our kids. We're responsible for the schools that our kids go to. We're responsible in making sure that we are involved in what our kids are learning outside the home. It is important that we start looking for programs outside of school that promote African culture, history, Pan-African thinking, nation formation, nation building, and nation management. There is nothing obscene about those three things because all prominent cultures do the same. The Europeans did the same thing to establish their culture and religion both locally and globally. Genghis Khan did the same thing. The Arabs did the same thing. The Vikings did the same thing. So there's nothing wrong with building a nation or forming a nation, building the nation, managing the nation, making sure that our children are involved heavily. Because education, like I had mentioned earlier, is a deliberate system of cultural promotion or course instigation by which a person is forced to fit squarely into the society to which he or she belongs as a responsible citizen. In ancient times, even before schools existed, the purpose of education was to train members of a community in fundamental skills, approved beliefs, habits, customs, group traditions, and religion peculiar to the community. Skills of defense from perceived enemies, farming, shelter, which is in architecture, were included in education of the youths of a group through their parents before the institution of formal schools. Folklore, proverbs, folk songs, oral traditions were powerful vehicles by which parents of ancient times conveyed and instilled education in their children. In a broad sense, everything that is acquired in a lifetime, habits, knowledge, skills, interests, attitudes, personality, language, not merely by attempting school, but by the totality of the time experience is education. The time that you learn or you put in to learn these skills, to have knowledge, to have interests, to have attitudes, personality, language. It's all part of the education, and you don't get all that in, from school. So it's really important that we, as people of African ancestry, understand this dilemma, and it's global. It's just not just over here, because in Africa, in Nigeria, where we come from, I mean, when you go to school over there, nobody's talking about African history, African culture, traditions, our contributions to civilized behavior. We immerse our children into the same educational system that validated colonialism in the first place. We read the same books that justified our colonization and enslavement, the Bible. We accept that. So a lot of the damage that is being done, we are also doing it to ourselves. Plus the damage that the educational system is doing to the children. So when the children go to school, they get bogged down. They get tested when they don't need to be tested. They're pipelined to prisons. When they go to school, then they come back home, they're pretty much getting the same thing that they got from 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. Once they get back home, they're getting the same thing. Not just about doing the homework and immersing them in the same education that they just experienced 6 hours prior to coming back home. So the children, African children, don't really get anything that anywhere promotes their culture, their mental health, assimilation into their traditions, an understanding of themselves, their history, and having institutions like Chiz Mahadum that are focused on the minds of the children and doing everything that is necessary to make sure that we are the cocoon that our children need when they've stressed for 8 hours Monday to Friday. So when they get home, that cocoon has to be there. We have to have community centers that promote, especially community centers in African American, or in Africa, of course, in Africa, but over here in the United States or anywhere else, in our neighborhoods, to have community centers. I'm not talking about the YMCA. I'm talking about community centers tasked with cultural promotion and making sure that these children are immersed in their African culture, history, traditions, contributions that we've made to civilized behavior as Africans. We need community centers that do that all over the place, in Africa too, because at this moment, regardless of what we see happening to our children, we really don't have any way to mitigate it. There's no structure, there's no community outpouring of support for this kind of how do I say this, a system that embraces our children and tells them, you are what you are by the grace of Almighty Chineke. Let nobody tell you that you're less than. All humans were created equal under the sun. Like I had said to you when you were growing up, the only thing greater than you is that rising sun and the setting sun. That's it. That's the only thing that you can't control. But we as a people can control everything else if there's a concerted effort and an understanding and realization that we could do better than we're doing right now. Because as you mentioned before, it is not just the system that is failing our children, but we as parents are failing them too. And a lot of the parents of these children are also damaged goods. So they too need a place that they can go to get a better understanding of themselves. Even if they've gone through university and got a college degree and or PhDs or whatever, but to still have institutions of learning, higher learning specifically for them, where they could still come back and learn some aspects of African culture, history, and traditions so that they can pass that on to their children. We don't have that pipeline of knowledge. Absolutely don't have it. And don't have institutions of higher learning or otherwise, or community centers. We don't have them in enough numbers. Now you have people that have private schools, like Dr. Nobantu, for example, here in Atlanta,
Enough
Georgia.
numbers, that's the thing.
Yeah, we don't have enough numbers. And even if we,
yeah.
even with those that we have there, we still don't have this collective effort where, just like cooking soup, you bring the meat, you bring the water, you bring the vegetables, you bring the seasoning, you bring everything, you put it all together, and you have this beautiful meal that you enjoy. So in as much as some of us understand what's going on, but there's still a missing piece. And that missing piece is, how do we now come together to address this problem so that our children can have a better future?
Yeah, you did. Thank you so much. Excellent, excellent. I just want to share this thought. Somebody sent me this video and I had watched it and I thought it would be really good to share. The young Thomas Edison, as you all know, was an American inventor and businessman. When he was at school, one day he came home from school, rather, and he had a note in his hand. He gave to his mother and told his mother that the teacher wanted her to read the note. She read the note and she started crying. She didn't tell the child, Thomas Jefferson, what the note said. Instead, what she said to Thomas Jefferson was that he was such a brilliant young man and that the school does not have the kind of good teachers that he deserves to teach him, so that she now, the mother, she'll teach him instead of the school. So she started teaching Thomas Edison. And of course, we know what happened. When he became an adult, he became an inventor, and the world has benefited a lot, obviously, from his learning. One day he was cleaning up things. After his mother had passed away, he was cleaning up. He found a note. That note that came from the school had actually said that he, Thomas Jefferson, was mentally ill, was not able to learn, and that the school would not teach him anymore. But the mother chose not to read that to him. Instead, what she chose was to tell him the opposite. You are so smart. But we, our parents, have forgotten that what we say to our children shapes who they become. So if the school is telling you that your child is not smart, is dumb, is disruptive and all that, and you share that with the child would embrace that.
Yeah.
That is your definition of who they are. And sometimes you're expecting perfection from them. They're not perfect. They're still learning. That's why children are in school. They're still learning. They will stumble. The point is to pick them up and hold them up and let them keep learning. But once you define them, where they are, and say, well, you just no good. You just like, some of us go as far as say, oh, you just like your daddy, or you just like your mom, and all of that kind of stuff. We now have stalled their growth. Don't share every negative thing the teacher says about your child. Say the opposite. In African communities, when a man does something that's bad, man, woman, does anything that's bad, there are some communities that the community will not tell him how bad he is, or focus on the activity that he has done. Instead, they'll remind him of his greatness. Do you know how powerful you are? Do you know whose child you are? I am so proud of you. You are going to be something else. Boy, I tell you, I can't wait to see you as a man. They will not focus on what is bad. They focus on the good, and you condition the person to think, hey, I'm important. I told you guys the story about the young man who stopped me with a gun at gunpoint. He wanted my car. And I knew at that moment what he needed to hear wasn't that he was bad. He already heard that enough. That's why he's trying to steal my car. He's embraced that definition of who he is. So he's acting out that definition. But I told him, Do you know whose child you are? Do you know you're an African? Do you know about your powerful ancestors? We don't do things like this. You're not representing. I'll give you my car keys, but what is that? You're bigger than that. He gave me back my keys and left. I touched him. I touched him. We can touch our children. Yes, listen to what the parents say, the teacher says. But when you hear those things, don't share it with the child. Don't say the teacher said you just a noisemaker, you just a bad person. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. Boy, I'm so mad at you. No, don't say that. Instead, for instance, if the teacher says that your child talks too much, tell the child, well, you know what? The teacher said you love to talk. I bet you make one heck of an attorney. I bet you'll be the next Martin Luther King, because boy, I heard you could talk. Don't make it a negative thing. And then if that's the case, channel him towards activities that allows him to talk. Or the child fights a lot. The teacher says, you know, your son, he's always trying to fight other people. Don't say, boy, I'll knock you out, bring you into this house, I'll take you out, blah, 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 blah. No. So, you know, they told me that you know how to box. You be boxing now. You know you shouldn't be boxing other kids. You should be doing that. But since you like to box, I tell you what, how about you go into wrestling, martial arts? How about we do something that you can, all that skills, you know. And then when he starts to take martial arts, they teach him how discipline. They discipline him. They teach him how to be disciplined so that you can actually change. You can change a child from being that which has been defined as who he is and change him into something else that you would like to see and something that will build him up. We tear children down and expect the opposite. When you're beating up on a child, how in the world is that child going to feel good? Beating up on him is not going to change his behavior. Now, I'm not saying that a child who needs a little whooping shouldn't get that if that's what they need. But I don't advocate that that's the only way to discipline. There's some people who feel, you know, in the African community that a child, you know, spare the rod and spoil the child, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, there's some people, everybody has their way of discipline. I'm just talking about words. Words may cause you not to even discipline in that manner. Just the words, just the kind words you say. No matter what. Build them up when they're little. So they'll use that as an adult. And as a matter of fact, remember what we say to our little ones. They'll say to their own. And so on and so forth. So we must get out of this habit of relaying back to our children the negativity that the teachers have established for them. That one, you know, she don't know how to talk. She just sits there like a dummy. Don't even look at her. She ain't gonna say nothing. And then you come to her and you say, girl, how come teacher said you don't say nothing? You know, when you're at home, you run your mouth all the time. How come you can't talk in school? You know, girl, you better open your mouth. There's a reason why she's not talking in school. That's what you need to find out. Don't draw the conclusion. That's a child who may be either bored or teased or disillusioned. There's so many reasons why she's not saying, or shy. But that doesn't mean it's a fault. You can find something. If somebody says your child doesn't talk at all at school. Oh, you know, I was told that you don't like to talk a lot at school. I know, you know, I didn't like to talk too much. But you know what? When you come home, I want you to talk to me. Let's chat. Let's talk. As there's some things you want to talk about, you just don't feel like talking about it. We need to build our children up. They're not necessarily built up. I told her, and here's another thing. Sometimes with the parents, depending on the economic condition of the family, when they get money for social SSI and all of that for a child who has been diagnosed with autism or ADHD and all of that, that money can be good. And they don't want to lose that money. So they don't want their children to get better. They want them to stay that way because they make money. School makes money, mama makes money, or daddy makes money. Hey, the child is the loser. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The child is the loser. So we as parents, check yourself, check your attitude, check your comments at the door and see what role are you playing in this child's life. Why is this child acting as described? Because you are acquiescing with the teacher and you're sharing that with the child. Now, the teacher, in some cases, may not share that with the child, but share with you. And the child who adores you, adores dad, adores mom, the worst thing for that child is to know that you disapprove of them. So you got to be creative. You choose to put them in the school. Okay, there are consequences for doing that. You have to be able and prepared to change some things around for them when they come home, when you hear things about them. My son, I was told my son talks a lot. Do you remember? And then what did I do? I started putting him in speaking engagements. He became Dr. Luther King, Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
He was such a good orator that the school system during my Black History Month, he was always the keynote speaker, a little boy. So I channeled that speaking, that talkativeness that he had, into learning how to speak, learning speeches. Since you want to talk,
that's genius.
Learn these speeches. So, yes, you must. Black parents and Latino parents, pay attention. This world is a Serengeti, survival of the fittest. Everybody wants their own children to survive. They don't want your children to come and teach their children or talk over the jobs that their children should get. You prepare your children to be lions, not lions. They'll be eaten. So check out the schools that your children are attending. Check them out for sure. Find out what's in your child's folder. As if you're not chock off, what you see, so shall you find. What are you seeking for your child? You'll be the voice for your child. These children can't speak for themselves. They can't speak for themselves. You have to be their voice. And the next time, and I'm saying this as somebody who goes to schools, when you go to a school and a teacher is telling you all these negative things about your child, don't sit there quietly and take it. Ask the teacher, thank you for sharing these shortcomings, but I do know that my child has some strengths. Have you noticed those strengths? Can you tell me what they are? And can we talk about those strengths? Because my child is more than all these weaknesses you're outlining. Ask them to share with you the good that your child, and if they can't tell you anything good about your child, they were not interested in your child's well-being. Listen to the negative, there are some things you need to know about your child, but also ask them, what about the good things this child does? Does he do anything good? It can't be all negative. Tell me the good about my child so I can also share that with him or her.
Yep.
You hear what I'm saying? You have to. Don't be so quick to accept all this stuff about your child. When you gave birth to that child, you had a vision for this child. When you had that little baby in your arm, you probably were you were probably seeing a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or whatever. And then one day the teacher tells you that child ain't no good. He runs his mouth, he does this and that, and then you buy into it. That dream, that powerful child that you envisioned, you just allow somebody to tear him or her down, because now all you're focused on is on his weakness. As a matter of fact, I tell parents, focus on your, yes, teach them what they need to know, but focus on their strengths. Use their strengths as a means to reinforce them when they do something positive. If a child loves to tinker with a car, then by job, take him to go and see auto shows. Take him to the auto shows. Give him the opportunity to touch, open the engine, see it. Somebody says, I have to read this, a very good point. Better than that, check the school and district curriculum. That is what dictates the structure of what these children are being forced to learn. They change history. That's right. That's right. Check it out, parents. Don't be so quick to accept all these things. Your children are not supposed to be leading other children, white children. They're supposed to be followers. That's how they condition them. Like you said, check out and see what the school and the district curriculum is. It's so important. You've got to know. Because I always say, to some of the parents I say, when I see all these kids in special ed, and I have to interview some of the parents, and I do want to ask, what is your what are your ambitions for your child? What's your child good at? Tell me what this child is good at. Well, he likes to rap. Ooh, he likes to rap? Okay, that's cool. Well, I don't want him wasting his time. Now, there are some very, very wealthy rap artists now. Is that not true? He likes to play basketball? Okay. That's his strength. Give him an outlet to, to exhibit, to show you the good about him, things that he can do while he's learning things that he's not good at. But when you over-process their minds, when you use just academics to define a child, you're doing the wrong thing. You did when I was a child. My teacher told my parents I was no good. That child can't learn. She's useless. I got 2 PhDs today. A BS degree, master's degree, PhDs, all of that. But my teacher didn't see that in me. But guess who saw it? My dad.
Yeah.
My dad saw it. I love my mom. She saw it to some degree. But my dad is the one who did not listen to that nonsense. Even things that happened to me, he said, the only thing greater than you is the Son, the greatest manifestation of God. You don't have the right to die until you made a difference and never live anywhere unknown. He pumped that in my head. He pumped that in my head. To him, I was the greatest African of the 20th century. He said that to all his kids. Dad never focused on our weakness. He always focused on our strengths. I'm so proud of you, he would say. It doesn't matter what the school said about you. Dad will always say, I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. And you know what? You spend the rest of your life trying. I'll never forget the day that I was sitting in his office and he told me Akwamuloku, because I was like a fool acting up outside. And my mother sent me in the office. My dad told me that I was a lamb. He's a lion and I'm a lamb. Instead of me being a lioness, I'm a lamb. He sent me out there, he didn't spank me or anything. My mother said, well, what did he say? I said, well, I'll say something about Agula Muluku. My mother said, do you understand what he just said to you? I said, no. He says that he's a lion, but you're not acting like one. And he doesn't understand how a lion could give birth to a lamb. I spent my life trying to prove to my dad that I was not a lamb.
Yeah.
That I was a lioness.
Yeah.
And then anything you did, and the thing about it, he understood you were trying to make amends, and he would tell you, you're the greatest African of the 20th century.
The greatest African. That was his thing. Okay, man.
That you always told you that. That was his thing. Okay, Majo, I'm so proud of you. I'm so
Yeah.
proud of you. And then, that works on you. You do your thoughts, your thoughts.
Oh, you're absolutely right. We cannot be quick to accept how these schools define our children and what they tell us is wrong with our kids. And then we just accept that as opposed to doing further research and understanding why our kids are either not paying attention or paying too much attention, why they're too active. We as parents have a role to play, okay, in the education of our children, in this nurturing. We as parents, we have to also, as people of African ancestry, parent our children together as a unit. Unity is key to everything. It is this unity, it is the willingness of peoples to come together. Okay, that is the key. And our success is largely dependent on that, on how our children are educated, what our children are learning in school, and what they're learning when they get out of school. Our goal should be to create an environment that allows our children to fit squarely into the society as responsible citizens. That's our goal. And we need to harness, bring together all the forces that can make this possible. Meeting of the minds, parents, community leaders, and even when you have some of these shows, BETs and all that, when we have opportunities to bring people, Black folks together, particularly in this country, when we come together, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Have we ever come together in that capacity and actually talked about African culture, history, religion, the imperative nature of making sure that we all understand this? We have our award shows. We have all kinds of stuff that we do as people of African ancestry, and we come together to do it. But then when we come together, we talk about none of these unifying things. We don't talk about cultural and economic revitalization. We don't talk about any one of those kinds of things. So it's really important that we stress cultural consistency, loving our own selves, our people, family love, self-love, community love, very, very important. If we can do these things and kind of have a framework on how to operate to address this problem, like a blueprint, then stick to it, promote it, talk about it. People that make videos on YouTube and all that, all these different African communities all over the world, that should be priority. And hopefully our viewers get to pass this program along to others and share it. And hopefully we'll start having some more eyes and ears focused on this issue. I can't hear you.
I just want to end on this note for those of us who are here with us today. I want to thank you for your comments. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. You matter. You matter. It's important to remember that you are, if you're not a parent already, you may be a future parent. Mokedi Charles Ugochukwu, thank you for being here and your nice comments. I'd like to thank Mag in his bag. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being here. Emeka Onyoha, thank you for being here as well. Abdul Rahman Musa Ododo, thank you for being here. Thank you all of you who joined us today. I just want to end on this note. Spiritually, we say, as a song. When Chineke blesses you with a child, it gives you a child for good. not to be a problem to you, but to add to humanity and be the source of good in the world. For that to happen, you as the parent, you have to play your role. You have to support that blessing that you have given. Our children are the blessing. We, the parents, have a responsibility to make sure that they become very constructive adults when they become older. What we do right now and how we allow others to raise them will impact who they become.
Oh, yeah.
As we have spoken, so shall it be. I thank you all for being with us. Dibia Yudi, thank you so very much. Dibia Chedozie had to leave us, but we look forward to seeing you again next Sunday for even another exciting Chism Live episode. Take care, everyone. May God bless you. Be in front of you, behind you, beside you, underneath you. You are going to be just fine today. This is just the beginning of your life. You know, the day that you have is your blessing. And so this is a blessed day, and we pray for another blessed day for you tomorrow. Yagazim. And so it is.
Yagazim.